Making money online as a comedian or a creative or performance artist, a spoken word artist, isn't just about live gigs anymore. With the rise of online platforms, comedians, creatives, spoken word artists, and performance artists now have new ways to earn, connect with audience, and grow their careers. Today I'm joined by Leanne Linsky, comedian turned entrepreneur and founder of Plausible, a live online comedy platform helping comedians get paid for their craft. Let's dive into how comedians can actually make money online. Every comedian has a moment when they realize they love making people laugh. What was that moment for you, and how did it set you on the path to comedy?
Okay, what a great question. For me, I don't know the specific moment. However, I know that it happened when I was very young. I grew up in a family that has a very quick-witted sense of humor, and my parents are really funny and fast on their feet, and so are my brothers. And so I felt my greatest memories and greatest sense of feeling like I belong, especially kind of stemmed from there. So when I could make my family laugh, that was like a big deal for me. So, and then as an adult, I didn't really know that I was going to go into comedy necessarily until my coworkers suggested it. So I always use humor as a way to break the ice, to get people to laugh and accept me and like me. And I think it kind of gradually became a part of who I am. And so I was kind of surprised when someone was like, hey, why aren't you pursuing this?
Yeah, wow. It became something normal to you, but then there's someone who was like, you should do this, and you're like, oh.
Yes, exactly.
You took a bold step by moving to New York to pursue comedy full-time. What was that experience like, and what were some of your biggest lessons you've learned during those early years?
Wow. Well, it's funny because when I moved to New York, it was something that kind of happened suddenly. I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about it. Before I moved, I had been working for a large corporation for nearly 13 years. And I suddenly found myself laid off from this job. And I had never thought about what would I seriously do if I weren't working here? Because I just felt like I've been here so long, I'll probably stay here and then retire. Yeah. And at that time, I was doing comedy and everything in the evenings and weekends, and I just absolutely loved it. And my friends were always like, oh, what if you were to move to New York or LA? And I was like, well, if I didn't have this job I loved, I would. Well, I said that, but then when I lost my job, my friends called me out and they're like, well, you always said if you didn't have that job you loved, you would move to New York. And suddenly I found myself having no excuses. Yeah. So I was like, yeah, sure. And then one of my friends called and said, hey, I'm going to move to New York, and I found a sublet. Would you go in on it with me? And I was like, well, I'll think about it. And he goes, you have 1 hour. And I was like, an hour? He's like, that's it. And I was like, okay. So I got off the phone. I walked around the block, came back in. I called him back. I go, okay, I'm in. And that's how I made my decision. It was very fast. And then I basically, a month later, put a bunch of stuff in storage and got rid of a bunch of stuff and packed 2 suitcases and moved to New York. So it was a big risk. And I didn't spend a lot of time wondering about it. I just made a decision to do it and then took the next indicative steps to make it happen. So looking back on that, I learned some valuable lessons. I think that was the best way for me to approach it. I'm so glad that I made that quick decision. And I think if I had slowed down and thought about it longer, I probably would never have gone. So sometimes I think I just need to follow my gut like I did in that situation. And it didn't make it necessarily easy, because moving to New York is a whole masterclass in life in itself. Yeah. And had I known of all the challenges and things that would have come up, I might have talked myself out of it. Yeah.
I think now that you tell the story, like in retrospect, it looks like an opportunity, but at the very moment when you had to make a decision, it was a very big risk.
Yeah. And at the same time, it was a big risk because I didn't know what I didn't know. And yet it wasn't a big risk because I had nothing to lose. I mean, my job was already gone, so I had no other plans. Yeah. So it was a weird, unusual place. It was really wild and fun and exciting at the same time.
Yeah. I think that's the beautiful thing of being at bottom zero. There is no other place you can go except up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. It's like, well, if I don't like it, I could move back, I guess.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's, you can always do things. And so same when I moved from New York, eventually I left New York and I moved to California, and it was the same kind of thing. It kind of happened suddenly. And then I was like, oh, wait, what have I done?
Yeah, and now that we look at it, the job loss in a way seems like a blessing, because probably if you've never had lost that job, you would have been doing comedy and all that on the side, and just the way you've been doing it for years.
Yeah, true. If I hadn't, sometimes I believe the universe does for us what we can't do for ourselves. I would never have left that job on my own. It was a really great job, and yeah, and I liked it. I'd been there for so long, and I loved the people I worked with. So it was it was just kind of handled for me instead of me doing it on my own accord.
Yeah. It was a necessary decision that needed to be made, but it wasn't a decision that you could make. Something just had to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah. Today's episode, we want to talk about the monetization opportunities for comedians as content creators online, right? And I feel that it's not even a matter of feel. I know that you're like the best person to talk about it, because you have a platform that helps comedians monetize their craft.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I think, when we look at performers and creators, there's so many people trying to monetize what they're doing, and all of these platforms and things out there are available to everybody, but there's so many hoops to jump through. It's so difficult to get to that place where you're actually monetizing. And I wanted to make it simple and transparent so people could start earning money day one.
Yeah. In a second, we'll talk about Plausible and all the things about Plausible, but I just want us to look about generally the monetization landscape for comedians. How has the monetization landscape for comedians changed since you first started in comedy? Like, you've been doing this for over 20 years, am I correct?
Yeah, you're correct.
Yeah. How has the monetization landscape for comedians changed over time?
Well, there's definitely more opportunity today than there was 20 years ago. When we think back before the internet really took off, comedy is done in person. So we could perform at coffee shops, bars, parties, theaters, right? Comedy clubs, all these different venues, but they were all in person. And comedians can get paid. Often comedians are offered performance spots for exposure, which means they're not going to pay you. It's just for the experience, like they're doing you a favor. Comedians can also take a performance gig for free drinks or free food. Sometimes comedians get paid in tips. Sometimes comedians can get paid a flat fee. Maybe it's to cover gas money, or, maybe it's a $10, $20, something like that. And when people get really good, they can negotiate a door split. And what that means is that they get a percentage of the revenue from the ticket sales. Yeah. So there's various levels at which people could earn traditionally. However, during the time I was living in New York, I also worked in a theater and was an office manager in a theater, and none of the performers were paid. Everybody performed for the exposure, and everybody was clamoring for that spot. Like, it was prestigious to have a performance spot in the theater. But the theater is the one who earned the ticket sales, and the theater is the one who earned all the food and, any food and beverage sales. So the performers didn't walk away with any money, but they did gain experience in performing live.
Yeah.
So I realized, I think there's an opportunity here to change the business model and offer more opportunity and put more control into the performer's hands. So as we've seen people do more things online, that has kind of cracked things open and given people more monetization options. So some platforms like a Patreon and others where people can, and OnlyFans, where people can subscribe, and then the creator has to constantly churn out content to fulfill their fan subscriptions, right?
Yeah.
So now they're creating content, but it's not necessarily performing. It's often blog posting, writing, photographs of things, funny videos, or, but not traditional stand-up comedy. They're doing all these other things and then hoping people will subscribe. Then there's doing things on like YouTube and platforms where maybe they'll generate ad revenue. Well, there's a threshold in which the content creator has to achieve of having X number of subscribers plus X number of hours viewed before those platforms will even put you in the mix to earn money from ads, right?
Yeah.
So there's all these barriers in which you have to, achieve, get to the next level in order to gain that monetization opportunity. And same with social media. If you want to be an influencer, you have to have X number of followers. So there's different tiers of influencer levels. And then at those different levels, maybe you can get some sponsorships or some paid ads here and there. But again, it kind of takes us down a different path than stand-up comedy to make that kind of money.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, you want to be a comedian, you want to perform, but you end up doing something else because you want to make money. Which there's nothing bad in it, but like the goal was to be a comedian, not to be this other thing.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's great that these other opportunities exist, but if your heart's truly in performing comedy and engaging with a live audience, how do we make that happen? And that's one of the primary reasons I created Plausible, because when I moved from New York to LA area, I was suddenly spending way more time on the highway because of geographics, how things are laid out.
Yeah.
And driving for over an hour or 2 hours at times for 5 minutes of stage time and then not get paid. And I was like, this is kind of crazy. How can I improve the performance opportunities? How can I get more stage time to practice my skills of actually performing and not break the bank or lose days driving? So I thought, what if I could take it online? Now, mind you, this was before the pandemic. So not many, I won't say nobody because I don't know that there's nobody, but in general, most people were not doing anything online, like using Zoom or Google Meets or Skype or anything. Yeah. Everything was still done in person and maybe on Facebook and whatnot. But I started experimenting with some of those existing technologies and taking it online to run some open mics, and people liked it and they paid for that, and paid me for those open mics. And we did that for quite a while. And then all of a sudden COVID happened and everybody started using video conferencing and live streaming to take things online to stay connected through the pandemic. But as we did that, we also learned that some of these technologies that are out there, although they're amazing and they got us through this pandemic and we use them for business and whatnot, they aren't necessarily designed for live entertainment. So it created some new problems for comedians because we don't want to feel like we're in an accounting meeting at work. And we also don't want to have some of the delays and other nuances that we found difficult to manage with some of these existing technologies. So with Plausible, I wanted to my vision was to level the playing field so that everybody had kind of control over their schedule and when they wanted to perform and how they could perform and what they wanted to produce, and provide them with the scheduling tools, the video streaming tools, the ticketing services, all of it built into one place so that people didn't have to spend time cobbling different technologies together to get something going. They could create their free account on Plausible and set up their profile and get going, without all of the extra hoops and all of the, you have to have this number of followers and that number of views and that, like, produce a good show, sell some tickets, and you're making some money. That's it. Yeah. Make it super simple.
Yeah. Most online platforms, they focus on recorded content, right? But for Plausible, I think the goal is all about live comedy performance. Why is live interaction so important for comedians, and how does it translate into better income opportunities?
Yeah, great question, right? So talk to any comedian. This goes back actually to the first question you asked me. So I love that you're bringing this up. I started looking to comedy at a very young age because of the way it made me feel. It made me feel like I belonged, that it was a part of something. People liked me, right? Like even with my family, if I could make my family laugh, I felt, oh my gosh, that was special, right? Yeah. There's this there's this joy that comes with the ability to make people laugh. And when we perform on a stage, in a club, in a coffee shop, whatever that is, we have that immediate audience response that fills us. And this is why so many comedians would work for free or exposure or something, because it's so rewarding just in itself of receiving that immediate response. It's also valuable when we're just starting out to receive the response of silence or, the groans, because then we know right away if a joke is working or if a joke isn't working. And that's how we get better. That's how we grow. Audience engagement and feedback is vital to our growth and our livelihood of what we do. And when we put it online, of course, there's some comedians who did really well by recording themselves and then putting their set online. And then they were good enough that they were able to monetize that. But they recorded it in front of a live audience so that they knew their jokes were landing.
Yeah.
And that's all recorded. So you get some of that energy. But what they don't get is the immediate response of all of those viewers,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
they miss out a little bit on that. And so during the pandemic, when things went online and everything and people live streamed or maybe were like, for instance, on YouTube, you can live stream. But then if you're streaming and you're talking and then your audience can only engage with you via chat, I have to stop and read the chat in order to respond or engage back with them.
Yeah.
And it takes me out of the moment.
Yeah.
And as a comedian, I lose my timing, my pacing. Yeah. Maybe someone misses a joke, that kind of thing. So being able to also do it online on Plausible, we have the audience in that virtual room with us. We can all see and hear each other. And I can hear immediately if the joke is working. I can hear the laughter. It feeds the energy. It feeds my craft. And people are much more likely to laugh when other people are laughing with them.
Yeah. The crowd effects,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. You some of the questions I wanted to ask you, you've answered them. Like Plausible was born in the during the pandemic period, right?
I had the idea back in 2014, 2015, and then I actually started experimenting doing it August of 2019, which is before COVID.
Yeah.
And then I did it through COVID, but Plausible, and then during the pandemic, I went back to school and I actually got my master's degree in innovation and technology, or innovation and entrepreneurship, and rebranded everything and officially made my business called Plausible. So technically, during the pandemic, but my ideation and everything came before then. Yeah.
Just to follow up on that, how did the name Plausible come about? What was the inspiration behind Plausible, the name Plausible?
That's kind of funny. It's making me laugh because originally when I was putting things out there, I just called everything online open mic, right? Because there were no online open mics. And so I had this generic name of online open mic, and that's what I was going to call it. And then COVID and everybody was an online open mic. And I'm like, well, that's not going to make any sense now. And so when I had to create it and formulate an actual business out of this, I was trying to come up with names that would allude to a live performance. So I was thinking in terms of applause. And then I was looking for applause, and I didn't want to box myself in just with comedy, because if this works for comedy, wouldn't it work for a musician? Wouldn't it work for a poet? Wouldn't it work for, right? So I'm trying to think bigger, like if this, what else? Who else can I help? So I just thought I definitely want it to be focused on live performance in real time, and although it's online. And so what happens then? And we do it for the applause. So I created a list of potential names. I swear it was like 10 pages long. I'm not kidding. And then I had to do domain searches and see what was already taken. Yes. And that's how I came up with the name, and the spelling of it was available.
Yeah. When I remember when I tried to come up with some names of websites, there were names I fell in love with, but for some reason the names were taken, and someone would ask me to pay like a huge sum amount to get the name. Was there any name, like when you were doing the brainstorming, that you're like, wow, this is a brilliant name, I should go check it out, and then you realize that someone has it? My God.
Yeah, there were a number of them. I don't remember what they were now. I think I still have I'm sure I still have that paper in one of my folders here. I hang on to stuff like that. I would have to go back and look. But yeah, there are a bunch.
Yeah.
And then I would be so disappointed. I'm like, oh, it's taken. And it's just taken by someone who wants to resell the name, you know. Yeah, I'm like, why do they do that?
Yeah, like it's so painful. Like it makes the process so hard because I know how many times I've come up with names that are like, you know, it's like at first time I just get the name and it's not like any business is using it, and I'm like, oh my god, like so I have to go through this process again. And even when I come up with a brilliant idea, I'm like, oh, don't be happy yet. You don't know if that name is available.
Yes, it's so true. It's so true. Yeah, it was challenging. I'll be honest. It was challenging. And then when I would find a name, you know, on the list that maybe was available, then before I take it, I would test it and I would test it out. You know, I had like 5 or 6 different people I would bother, you know, I would call and be like, hey, if I say this business name to you, what do you think? What does it make you think of? So that I could get their feedback. Because if they thought of, you know, coffee or like a gym membership, well, that's probably not the name I should go with.
Yeah. Yeah, the fact that you talk about testing, it just made me remember an expo on domain names where sometimes you might be so excited about the names that you don't even see what other people are seeing. I'll give an example. Let's say you came up with a domain name called therapist.com. You know that when someone actually reads therapist, they could also see something like called the rapist.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so true. And then also what rhymes with it, or what, you know, if I were 5 years old, what kind of silly names could I make out of it? Because people do that.
Yeah. Wow. So we've talked about Plausible. One of them I'd like to know is, you know, there are so many platforms out there, and for some of them, they don't even pay creators. Like Instagram doesn't even pay creators. YouTube does pay, but TikTok most of the times pennies. What percentage of revenue typically goes to comedians, and how does it compare to the other options on Plausible?
Yeah, 60% goes to the comedian.
Wow.
Yep.
So that's even more than YouTube pays.
Yeah, it is. 60% goes to the comedian. The remaining 40% covers all of the fees and processing fees, payout fees, you know, all the expenses.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting to know. Like when I you know, the exciting thing is that recently I had an episode with someone who was doing this exact thing you're doing, but for podcasters.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about live events and live performance, and with AI and video cloning, video creation, text to speech and all that, people are looking for live experience to connect with the humans and all that.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. People are. We still seek that connection and that real time engagement, even if it's online. And I think to put it on platforms other than the ones we use for our day job, we don't want to feel like we're at work either. So to be able to switch those off and hop on to a software or something that's completely different and only used for entertainment purposes is a big relief. And having that human touch, that human interaction is key. And in comedy, I mean, that's everything. We thrive on that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Now, I'd love for us to just look at, you know, some of the monetization opportunities how creators can, ask how comedian creators can monetize their stuff and all that. So some of the questions I'll be asking will be as regards that, right? The question I want to ask is, so for most comedians, for most persons who are just starting out, there's this they don't feel they're good enough, right, to start monetizing, to start getting paid, right? They feel like they have to go through a series of approval. I don't know by who, but in order to be considered good enough to start charging and taking tickets. How would you challenge that thought process?
So you mean like how there's no on Plausible, you can sell one ticket and you're making 60% of whatever you charge for that ticket.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
so you don't have to sell like a minimum of 10 or anything like that.
I mean, the tools are there, but you know, it's a thing of the mind now, because you've made the tools available. So I can go to Plausible and say, okay, I want to do live events, and I could do what I want to do. But I can't. Nothing will be done except I say, okay, I want to do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so for most persons, they just feel when you talk about comedians, they feel like, oh, I'm not a professional comedian, and they make people laugh. They are actually funny, right? But they've never
Yeah.
they've never done they've never been in a situation where they've made like over 50 persons laugh at the same time. So it's just been maybe their classroom, their family, in a small setting and stuff like that. And they're like, okay, maybe I could do this, but they're not sure because they've never done like a very big audience. So they're like, I'm a comedian or something like that.
Yeah, well, we all start somewhere. And that's exactly, I mean, my goodness, when I look back at when I started just by making my family laugh, right? And then over time, it was my coworkers. And they're like, hey, why don't you kind of pursue this? So when I first started doing shows, we invited everybody in our classes. When we do a class show, we'd invite our friends and family, because who is going to love and cheer us on more than the people who already love and know us, right?
Yeah.
And if that show is $5, even a free show, it gets us experience in several ways. One, in getting the stage time, performing in front of other people, honing those comedy skills. It also gives us experience in telling people, hey, I'm going to be doing a show. I'd like to invite you. Like, that's a skill set in itself, is promoting yourself, telling people, I'm doing this. Why don't you come? You should come. You don't want to miss this. This will be really fun. And doing that over and over, it becomes easier and easier. I think for most people, in some cases, somebody argue with that, it gets harder because they're like, I've already asked these people. As we become more, I think as a society, we put more and more out on social media. So if someone's already putting things out on social media about what you're doing, why wouldn't you tell people you're doing a show on Plausible? Right? Like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm doing a show on Plausible, come. One, people who object, like, why would my fans come to another platform and do something? If you're a comedian or a performer of any type and someone likes what you're doing, they're already doing things for you. They're already following you. They already started following you on Facebook, and then they followed you to Instagram, and then they followed you to TikTok, and then they followed you to YouTube, and now they're reading your blog. If they like you, they want to hear from you. That's why they're following you in the first place. And so for them to...
Okay, you were saying before the break in transmission, you were talking about how how comedians can convert free followers into paying supporters.
Oh, yeah. So I was saying, like, how people ask, how can I get my fans to come over to Plausible and watch us, or even get to my in-person show? Well, I think it's a great question. And a lot of people ask it, and it's no different than inviting someone out for the evening, or, start with people who like you and know you already and want to support you. So when we're just starting out, like class shows and things like that, I would invite friends and family. And then they're like, great. And they do come out. Coworkers love to come out and support, especially people doing comedy, and they're like, yeah, that's going to be really fun. They would always... different people would surprise me and show up to a show. So now when it comes to those were in person. Now when it comes to online events, people are like, but really, will people come and watch? Well, yeah, it's even easier for people to come or to log in and watch you online than it is for them to leave their home, get in a car, pay for a babysitter, pay for parking, pay a 2-drink minimum, do all of these things to see you perform. It saves them time. It saves them money. They're already following you on all these social media platforms. Now they can just log into one and connect with you immediately and see you perform and be in a live audience. Like, yeah, of course. This is the future. This is how people connect all the time. It's efficient.
Yeah. So far we'll be talking about how people can, make money and all that. I'd love to, when you mentioned Plausible, some of the thoughts I had in mind earlier on, you talked about how it could also be a platform for poets, spoken word artists, musicians, or all other forms of performance. What I was thinking is, for some of us, we have comedy. Let's be honest. We make our friends and family laugh, but some of them, they just laugh because the joke is averagely good, and we need to refine our craft and make it better. And that's where open mic comes in. But open mic is not exactly something that most of us would have access to. And those of us who have access to it is either maybe too far from where we live, then we have to spend 2 to 3 hours to go there, maybe every night. And, it's just stressful. It takes time, consume money. And we see a platform like Plausible, right? A platform like Plausible could help us do open mic, right? I'd like for you to expand how, how someone who feels like they have this talent in comedy, but they're not exactly good yet, but they want to like refine it through testing and feedback. How could they use a platform like Plausible to like do that?
Oh, yeah, this is great because I have a lot of comedians who are just like that on Plausible. We have a lot of open mics. And for the listener, in case you don't know, like Wisdom was just saying, an open mic is a place where performers, anybody can get up and put their name in to get some stage time and try out their new jokes, try out their story, and see how the audience responds to it. So an open mic can often be a lot of surprises and, sometimes, most of the time, pleasant ones, and sometimes, whoa, cringe, right? But
Yeah.
they're vital for anyone who is performing to work their skills and learn. So open mics are a huge part of the performer's journey. Comedians on Plausible can host open mics or attend open mics. And there's open mics most days of the week on Plausible now, but hosted by different people and attended by different people, depending on people's schedules and stuff. Most of them, I think, right now are free. So, and as long as anybody has an internet connected device, you can log into Plausible and join in one of the open mics and get a spot and give comedy a try. And of course, if you're not a performer, but you just want to check it out, fans are always welcome to attend these things. We love nothing more than a good audience member who's interested and engaged. So we do have open mics on there. We also have workshops and classes. And
Wow, workshop and classes. Wow, I've been thinking maybe I might have something to do with comedy. Well, I'll see where that will take me.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And especially if you're hosting, a podcast, there's so many opportunities to weave sense of humor in there or just improve any public speaking skills that you already have all of the things. This should be easy peasy for you.
Yeah. Wow. And for me, I'm just thinking Plausible is online, and what someone needs to access it is just internet connection, which means that comedians can actually, not just comedians, but performers and creators can actually be universal, right? Compared to, let's say, you mentioned that you're calling from Seattle, right? Let's say you are in Seattle now, and you are a comedian. If you wanted to do a live show, 95% or 99% of persons will be people in Seattle. Even if someone had to travel, it would be maybe neighboring cities. I don't really see a situation where someone will have to fly from maybe Africa or Asia just to attend your show. Well, they could do that, but the number is very small.
Yeah. So you could get people from all over. You're no longer limited by your geographic area, right? So it really opens things up. For sure. And you just need, like you said, the internet connected device, because we're now mobile friendly and it's adaptive. So it can even be used on tablets or iPads. And also the one requirement we do have is you use the Chrome browser. Chrome is really good for video streaming. So we recommend Chrome browser. Sometimes people will try with some of the other browsers and they'll have an adverse impact or they might experience some difficulties. So we always say use Google Chrome.
Yeah. Wow. So the word is, there's a quote I heard. I think all the world is a stage and something like that. Okay, the word is my stage now. I think this metaphorically speaking, Plausible has just made the word my stage.
Yes. So true. So true.
Yeah. Earlier on, you were kind of hinting about how people can build an audience, and you talked about the people should start from families and friends and all that, right? And now, as a comedian, right? It's two-phase now. You're not just a comedian. You're both a creator trying to build an audience who will eventually come for your live shows and all that, right? So for me, the question I want to ask is, how do you balance audience building and content quality, which of course is the comedy itself?
Oh, wow. What a question. So I think for me, I'll take it back to when I was doing everything in person back in the early 2000s. And also when I was writing my one-person show, right? So I spent a lot of time, I invested a lot of time into creating a show that people would want to pay to see. And so I spent hours, days, weeks, months, up to maybe a year writing a show that I then premiered in New York City and then took to Delaware and to DC and then back again to New York, right? So it was over a period of a couple of years that I was writing every day, rewriting, practicing, rehearsal, tech rehearsal, doing that for a very long time before I even went out to market and sell my show, right?
Yeah.
So that's one example. Now, another thing is when I was doing shows, improv shows, which is everything's made up on the spot. We get audience suggestion and then we improvise everything, and it's with an ensemble. And I was doing improv for many years, and the theater did not pay us, but we performed every Friday night or whatever night it was. We had regular shows, and the theater sold tickets, and the theater earned ticket revenue and anything off of the bar, but we were not paid as performers. And those shows, there was always an audience.
Yeah.
We were still expected to promote it and tell our friends and have people come. So we all posted on social media, would try to get a big audience all of the time.
Yeah.
So we're always constantly promoting, but we were also always practicing. We had a director. We treated it like a real show. So when I think in terms of Plausible, unlike social media where sometimes people just go live and then they are like driving in their car or they're walking through the store and they're just talking kind of stream of conscious.
Yeah.
Would someone pay for that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Would they? Right? Would you? Because that's something that you see on social media. So when you think of what you're asking people to pay for is to be entertained. So if you're doing a show and you want to be a comedian, then put on a show and perform your stand-up. Audiences typically don't want to see someone read their jokes from a notebook when they go to a theater. So they're probably not going to want to see you read your jokes from a computer screen and not have good lighting or not have, comedic timing or anything behind it. Because now you're just reading something to me, send it to me in an email. So one of the things that I try to keep up top of mind, if I'm asking someone to come to my show, then I should bring the energy. I should bring the entertainment. I should be on. I should treat my virtual square online as my stage. And, start the show and treat it like a show and entertain the people and end the show. So showing up on time, greeting all of your audience members, performing, closing the show, thanking them for coming. All of those things are good etiquette in performance. So I think, as you're starting out, these are things we learn by going to a good open mic, by attending these things. We learn this as in part of our journey. We learn this in classes and workshops and things like that. And we get better at it the more we do it. So again, it's like people always, there's a joke, how do I get to Carnegie Hall? And then someone yells, practice, right?
Yeah.
So we practice by doing that. We have to create something that is of value. It's a craft. It's not just like, I just thought of this joke 2 minutes ago. I spend a lot of time writing and crafting good jokes and putting a set together and putting things together. So, we think about that as a movie. We don't go to a movie that someone, they happen to have their camera on their dash cam or in their pocket.
Yeah.
It's like, it's well produced, it's put out, and then we spend money on those things. So I hope that makes more sense. So it's different than maybe what you might view as you scroll through your Instagram.
Yeah.
But it's also not what you get when you go to an in-person theater because it's not in person. But it's somewhere in that in-between where, you're showing up for something and you expect to be entertained.
Yeah. Like for most of the things you talked about, right? Even though you said you guys had to promote for the theater, even though you're not paid, right? And I think that ties back to like the two forms of ways you can fund an idea, you can support an idea. And the first one is like other people's audience and then other people's money, right? As a comedian, if you're pretty good at comedy, right, you could go on other people's show, on other people's podcast. I know there are a lot of comedy podcasts out there. You could get featured as a guest and, just have a good time and then do some of your jokes and stuff like that. And people will go check you out and say, wow, I love that guy. He's actually funny. I'd love to see more of his stuff, right? Now, you didn't have to start from scratch, but you just leverage other people's audience and now, you have people.
Exactly. I mean, That's a great example. It's even like when you look at movie stars and celebrities and they have a new movie coming out.
Yeah.
They still have to go and they still post on their social media, hey, I'm doing a
Yeah.
movie, and they post pictures on set and they do that. And then they go and they do all these promotions on these other shows
Yeah.
to tell people about it. They're celebrities and yet they still have to do the work of promoting
Yeah.
their shows. Yeah. So, yeah, that's part of the business.
I think that gives a lot of ideas because, when we look at that, say for example, you wanted to do a comedy special about, let's call it let's say the Seattle childhood experience or something like that, where you make jokes about, growing up in Seattle, or let's just go something bigger so that you have a bigger audience, the American childhood experience, right? Where you make jokes that people would feel nostalgic and about growing up as a child in America and stuff like that, right? And, you're writing the jokes, you're coming up with ideas, you're putting things in place. Instead of just doing that, like doing everything and then say, okay, now I've written everything. How do I get people to come to the show? You could actually, from the day one, you could say, okay, well, guys, I have an idea for this stuff. I would love to do this stuff. And then you start posting on social media and like, okay, I wrote this joke and this is a rough sketch about it. And over time, people are like, wow. And then at the end of the day, you're like, wow, guys, I'm through with I'm done writing the jokes for this team, the childhood experience, and I'll be doing a live performance of it on this platform called Plausible or stuff like that. And now people are already invested. Like when you started, they were there with you, so they want to like see what it looks like, and so it makes sense that they would go to Plausible and buy tickets and then watch the show, right?
Yes, that's exactly it. Like, and that's kind of, you described my process, right? Like I'll go to different open mics and I'll write different jokes and I'll start piecing things together. And recently I just had this new idea of a show that I really want to write. It's completely different than anything I've done before. I'd have to kind of start my jokes from scratch because it comes from a whole different perspective on things.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that would be really fun. So what I'm planning on doing is now incorporating putting back some more of my writing time into my schedule so that I can do that. And then as I write, like I noticed on your YouTube channel, like how you're building in public, right?
Yeah.
A comedian does that. We build in public. We go to open mics and work out all of those jokes in front of an audience to see if they work. And then we start putting our product together, our show, our set.
Yeah.
And so that then it all comes together eventually over time. But yeah, we build in public all the time.
Yeah.
You can't write in a vacuum. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to test and see how things work, and then before you release the final product. And then the funny thing about this is because everything is happening online, you're capturing it, so you can actually make teasers or say this is how the first open mic I did went. Right, guys, I'll be doing another open mic. I would love for you guys to come around on the platform, and then they come around, and then you test some jokes and test some ideas, and then you also make some clips and post maybe on Instagram and socials, and then say, well, the next open mic, I don't know how many. I'm not really in comedy, but I don't know how many open mic you have to do to test an idea and flesh it out, before you do a live show. But you get what I'm trying to paint.
Yeah. That's it. And it depends on the comedian, right? Like I'll always work my jokes out. Even if I've done them and I've gotten them to a really good place where I know they work all the time, I still need to practice them. I still need to practice the delivery and my cadence and make sure I don't forget them. To keep them polished and feeling like they're super fresh. So for me, I'm always going to open mics and working things out. And also, it's like going to the gym. If I go to the gym every day, I keep my muscles toned and defined and strong. But if I stop going to the gym, then all of that work eventually atrophies, right?
Yeah.
So I'm constantly having to work on all of those muscles and all of those things all the time.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if I only do leg day, pretty soon I have like zero upper body. I have noodle arms, but I have these really massive legs,
Yeah.
So I have to work out all my jokes all the time. And sometimes I work on premises or kind of getting through too many words to get to the point.
Yeah.
Sometimes I work on, I have something that's really close and now it's just a matter of making some tweaks. Sometimes it's just a matter of working out old stuff that I know is tried and true, but I just have to rememorize it. Some of it is how can I incorporate some physicality when I do this joke? So there's so many little things that can always be improved.
Yeah, very
just
important.
like our bodies. I can get really in shape, and then I look down and I'm like, oh, but my knees or my belly, or, right?
Yeah, and then you keep getting feedback and testing and then improving and testing and then improving. And that ties back to the question I want to ask, which is we talked about open mic, but something I didn't get to really ask you is, let's say for someone who's just starting out, right, who's still in the trenches, looking at their craft and all that, and they love to go to open mics, right? Is there like something where if you're a comedian, you can come on the open mic and then just get to test your ideas? But then when you go to the open mic, the ready audience of people who would love to see people just to listen to people's jokes and give feedback. Is there something like that online?
Plausible? Yeah. Absolutely. In fact, a good number of comedians on Plausible, I've noticed that that's more likely to happen online than it is in person. It's become way more commonplace online for people to give feedback to one another. So a lot of the open mics, for instance, on Plausible right now, are mostly all comedians in the open mics. I would say is all comedians, and they love to share peer-to-peer feedback. And so after someone does a set, the host might say, okay, it's time for some feedback. And then each person, they'll go around the room and each person can kind of share what they thought. Or if the comedian had a joke and specific questions around that joke, then everybody can give them feedback on that. So that does happen. And it's probably more common now than it was.
Yeah. Because for me, that's the part I'm looking at, not just making, because I don't feel like I have something good enough for someone to pay, to crack joke. And it's not like there's anything bad there, but I know that, I would have to work out the material a lot before, I start taking money from people, right? Mm-hmm. And it would be nice to have a place where I don't have to think about building my audience. I can just go there and test my material.
Yep, absolutely. That's a great question, and that's exactly what open mics are for. And each open mic can be slightly different from another depending on how the host is. It's kind of, each mic has its own personality. Yeah. And so you kind of can go from mic to mic. And I like all of them because I like the idea of not going into a room and knowing what to expect sometimes. I think that helps also us develop skills of the unexpected or get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And like, these people may not like my stuff. So I kind of like the idea of it always, bringing new challenges with different hosts and different energies.
Yeah. Something I want to ask is, a lot of people are doing live shows and all that, right? For me, I feel like when you do live shows, that's like content you're creating, right? So you work with, like daily, you work with a lot of comedians, and I know we talk about comedians, but just for the audience out there, Plausible is not just for comedians, but probably it's because the founder is a comedian. Maybe that's why we're just talking about comedy. Well,
it is targeted just for comedians at this point. I do not object to other solo artists joining us and testing it out. I mean, that's kind of what art is experimental about. But as Plausible continues to grow, I see a future where there is a Plausible not just for comedy, but a Plausible for these other areas of poets and musicians. So there's opportunity for us to expand, and that's part of our vision. Yeah.
So the question I wanted to ask was, how can someone effectively repurpose their live shows, open mics, into multiple revenue streams and growing their audience and stuff like that?
How can they
repurpose or effectively package their live shows, right? Their content, which is the live event, and to get other multiple income streams other than live ticket sales.
How do they promote it?
No, okay. Let me give you a scenario so you understand what the question I'm asking. Right? If you do live shows, right? Let's say people pay. Let's say 100 persons pay for ticket sales, right? Now you get to make 100. I don't know how much you charge, but that's the amount you make for doing that live show, right? So what I'm saying is that I know that there are other opportunities. I just might not know what they might be, but I know that there are other opportunities out there, to also benefit from that live event, even after the live events, right? From the recorded video Okay,
so I think I understand what you mean. So if you go and do an in-person event, you mean?
Yeah. What happens after the in-person event?
Okay, and after an in-person event, it depends. So if you are booked by a comedy club, then they sometimes, let's say if you're doing what we call a guest spot, which is like sometimes 3 to 7 minutes of stage time, they may not pay you at all. Some comedy clubs will ask you to go and sell tickets for that comedy spot, for that stage time. Or some clubs will maybe pay you $25-$30, right? Or some clubs might be like, here's some free drink tickets. Now, some clubs will be like, you can do this guest spot and we'll give you a free recording of your time on our stage. And then you can put that on YouTube, right? I don't know if you're good enough to monetize it. If you're only guest spotting, you're probably not that well known and you're probably not going to get that many views on YouTube unless you're absolutely like something happens and you completely crush it, right? Yeah. But if you're a feature and let's say you're doing 10 to 20 minutes or something like that, and the club offers you, $30 to $100, or depending on the size of the venue, the night, what they're, how well known this club is, or if it's a bar or not a club, like all these things can get paid. So you might get a flat fee and then get a recording or not get a recording, or maybe it's a recording off your phone. So if you want to monetize it afterward, it's on you to kind of get some sort of recording off of your phone or tablet or something from a chair in the audience. Okay. Now, if you're going to record your own special, then you got to rent a venue. You got to hire your production team, people to edit your video, like all of those things, right? Yeah. And make sure the lighting is there, that you're mic'd properly for your video and for a live audience. And then you're going to probably have to come out of pocket to pay for that. Yeah. So there's all of these other things that are possible, but again, they do take work. I mean, anything good does. They are possible. People have done them, as you can see on social, and then maybe they edit those videos down into clips that they put on TikTok or YouTube and whatnot. Now, if you're to do something online, like on Plausible, you're in charge. So if you want to have a live audience pay to see you on Plausible, you set your own ticket price. You can sell one ticket, the minimum is free, and then the next, so you can do a free show. If you charge for a ticket, the minimum ticket price is $5. So you can charge $5 and up for that. And you sell one ticket, you make 60% of that $5. Yeah. If you sell $10, you make 60% of that. So you make $6. Yeah. If you sell $20, you make 60% of that. It's the math, so they're keeping the math simple, right? Yeah. And then if you record it, because you can record on Plausible, then you can download it and you can cut up clips and post them anywhere else you want and monetize it. Yeah. And then also grow your audience so that next time when you want to do a live show, you have many ticket sales, not just maybe Correct.
100 or so.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It was great chatting with you. And right now, as I'm about to rounding up, I just realized that wait, I'm talking with a comedian, and I'm
not
like,
funny.
Wait, no, that's not the question. And I'm like, wait, you're talking with a comedian. Like, it would be nice if we hear a joke.
I know, right?
I keep in mind that you're working with a global audience, so you have to give us a material that it's not just Seattle people that would get it.
Yes. Well, I don't know if you heard in the news that the cows are really mad right now. Did you hear about this? Yeah, cows. They're very angry because they're tired of being blamed for climate change. They're so mad that they started their own Moo Too movement.
I see what you did there. Wow,
yes.
Moo Too movement.
Right?
Wow.
Sorry.
It took me some time.
Yeah. I was trying to think, what would be appropriate for a global audience? Okay.
Moo Too movement. Wow. Wow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wow, thank you so much. Wow, that was so short. I was like, okay, is this going to take long? When will the punchline come? I was like, okay, just be patient.
Sorry. Yeah. So normally I'd be like, I don't know if you heard that in the news, the cows are very angry. They're tired of being blamed for climate change, so much so that they started their own Moo Too movement. So yeah, that's the joke a little bit faster, but.
But you talked about delivery and timing, and you see that's what working with the live audience is different, right?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And to be able to see and hear people, it does make a big difference,
Yeah.
Because it changes our cadence and our pacing and timing and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Leanne, for coming to the show. Right.
Thank you.
Before we end this episode, where can people connect with you and, get to learn more?
Yeah, by all means, they can create their free account on Plausible. I'm on there all the time. Also, they can find me on LinkedIn. So they can just look up Plausible on LinkedIn, or they can find me Leanne Linsky. I'm the only Leanne Linsky in the world. So you should be able to find me and message me there if you need me.
Yeah, I don't think if I can say that. Maybe I'll have to check. I'm the only Leanne Linsky in the world.
Mm-hmm. The one and only.
One and only. Any other one is a counterfeit.
Exactly. They're a bot.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming to the show. It was great having you on the platform, and I have so much ideas. And usually I used to think that in order to be a poet or probably a spoken word, because that's my own thing, not comedy. I dabble in comedy, but I don't really see myself going there professionally. But now that you've talked about Plausible and this platform, I see so much opportunities to to monetize and to make something out of it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And, I'd love to keep the conversation open. If you have questions or anything, Wisdom, on what you'd like to experiment with, please, by all means, reach out. Let's talk. Or just hop on and try it out, see what happens. So, we'd love to have you there and, join in the fun.
That wraps up today's episode on how comedians can actually make money online. A huge thank you to Leanne Linsky for sharing her insights on the evolving comedy industry and how Plausible is helping comedians turn their passion into profit. If you found this episode valuable, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a fellow comedian or content creator who could use these insights. And if you're ready to take your comedy career to the next level, check out Plausible and explore new ways to monetize your craft. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, keep creating, keep performing, and keep making the world laugh.